Thanks for joining us on another episode of Beyond the Listing. I'm your host, Jeremy Madore, where we talk about the business of real estate outside of the listing environment. And today I have the distinct pleasure of working with a good friend and colleague, of conversing with a good friend and colleague who I think has been with us for almost since the beginning. You know, we've been here for almost just over 12 years, and she and I have worked together for not too short of that. I'd say probably 9 years or so. And it's been a pleasure to work alongside her, and I'm very happy to have her in studio today. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce.
Hi, I'm Lauren Demerjian from Open Door Real Estate in Princeton. I am a broker owner of my own independent boutique brokerage.
And boutique it is indeed,
Yes.
because I've been able to get to know you personally in a way that I don't often get to know other realtors, because you're, for lack of a better term, you're one level up. And the reason why is because you own the brokerage, you have that larger concept view
Sure.
of the goings on of real estate. And it's not just about the transaction, it's about the relationships generated during those journeys.
Exactly.
And I know that you firmly believe in that, because our conversations all throughout working together have always been about family and about work and about employees and about the dynamics in the real estate environment as well as the business environment. And it's always been enriching to have those conversations with you, because not only do I feel more bonded, I also feel more supported myself through knowing that there's another individual out there who's not too different in their backgrounds and in their thought processes than I am.
Right. Absolutely.
It's been fantastic.
Yes, and I've enjoyed it. And you have been my photographer, and your company has been my choice and our team's choice. And because we are so like-minded, and I have to say, I'm always pleased with the level of excellence and detail that, that curtain could be, pushed off to the side a little bit more. And we're always thrilled with the photography. And as we've been talking about, it's really nice to surround yourself with people that are like you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And thank you for building a business that enjoys that quality in other people, and who recognizes that quality in other people, not just through your vendors, but through your actual team that you've assembled. Because we feel respected and privileged to be working alongside your team. And it's very obvious that they didn't just arrive at those values independently, that they're also being supported by you and your staff.
Oh, thank you. We have a great team, great ethics and integrity, which I'm always so proud of.
What areas do your team cover, just so that our audience knows?
So our office is located in Princeton, and we did have an office in downtown Sterling. But as the industry has changed and agents don't really work out of a bricks and mortar as much, we have one office. And we focus on Princeton and Sterling, West Boylston, Holden, the Wachusett School District. And then we go a little bit north of Route 2 and then down in the Worcester area.
Okay.
And some of us, for myself, because I spent so many years in Boston, my core coverage is 495 to Worcester.
Okay.
But then I do things in Boston because I was there for so many years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It's hard to give up the stomping grounds, right?
Yeah.
And you go where the business takes you,
Right.
But what you're focusing on primarily is the Wachusett district.
The Wachusett district, yes. Yeah. With West Boylston.
Right. Right. So for us, that's very convenient for us, because
Yeah.
it's in our backyard, effectively, from
Yep.
Fitchburg. It's a lot easier to get to you than it is to, say, get to Framingham, for example. Right. So it makes the commute easier for us, for sure. So.
Absolutely. And vice versa. I got here in no time. I couldn't believe it. Minutes down the road from my house.
Yeah.
So that was nice. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too.
We were just talking off camera
Yep.
that we are both in similar leadership roles with our own businesses.
Correct.
You with Open Door, me with Madore Photography, and of course, Next Level that we're creating. The challenge, of course, as a leader is that not every day is fulfilling for the same reasons.
Right.
That fulfillment morphs on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Some days or some seasons, some years, they're slogs, right? Like you're like a lot of work, not a lot of reward.
Yep.
You start questioning your value
Right.
as an individual.
Right.
You come home and you're like, I'm just not feeling it, right?
Yeah.
I had a talk with my oldest daughter. She's graduating this year from high school. I had a talk with her yesterday. She goes, I called her on the phone and she goes, "How was your day?" I'm like, she and I have a very honest communication. And I said, honestly, it was okay.
Yeah.
I said, it's different because coming down to Massachusetts on a visit-driven basis is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, my value here to lead the team, answer questions, have team meetings, do podcasts, those are all very solid value items. And I do feel fulfilled during those moments.
Yep.
The challenge is that I then have to go home to Maine and leave that behind. And I don't get to participate in the company culture that I'm trying to cultivate. Right. Because I'm only seeing it for a very short window whenever I visit, but then I'm vacant from it for the times that I'm not here. Right. That's a very difficult dynamic with having remote operations for me, being remote up in Maine. And so it's challenging right now for my life where I'm in my home office, maybe an hour to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, technically, doing, what it is that I do. And the other times I'm dad, I'm husband, my wife and I are building an Airbnb right next door to our house. We have a 1-bedroom Airbnb that we're putting together. And we're about halfway through it. It's all framed in, all watertight. We just have to do the interior. Yeah. And so the project is going fine. It's going well. And I find fulfillment in the doing of that because I'm literally physically building it myself. With my oldest brother. Yeah. He's a contractor and I'm basically his assistant for this, which is a very humbling role, by the way. Fun. Taking direction from your older sibling is definitely a different dynamic, especially since I'm so used to leading this. Yeah. But the point is that trying to figure out where it is that you are in your current life, at the current year that we're in, and how your work and your family life and your spiritual life and your, community involvement. There's so many different dynamics there. Yep. How does that all intertwine? And can we temporarily put something on the table and walk away from it for a little bit and then come back to it later, like a career? Right. And I'm not necessarily talking about retiring from a career so much as I am about, this year I'm going easy on the career and I'm going full tilt on family. Right. And it's the gas pedal brake thing going on. And
and for me, as I reflect back, that's such a critical thing because I don't have any regrets, but I know that there are times when like the train was going down the tracks and the engine was humming and it was like, whoo. Yeah. And because of, having 5 children that I'm raising, I had to step away. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times I will look at other successful realtors and I'll think most of the time they had a clear path with how things were being managed at home. Right. Or their personalities were such that being there as an integral part of raising their kids wasn't their number one priority. It was the real estate career. And so as we were speaking off camera, my 5th and final is graduating from high school. And so I've really set the goals that, okay, this is the year where you don't have to sort of feel like you're going to get things going and then you're going to have to pull back a little bit. And it's that work-life balance
which is a myth. Yeah. Like work-life balance is not really like a legitimate thing. There's no such thing as real balance. Right. What it is, am I fulfilled in these different areas of my life? Yep. And if not, why? Right. Right. You're 10 years ahead as far as your children's ages. Right. Right. So my youngest is 8 and she's going to be graduating in 10 years. Right. Right. Actually less than that because she's in 3rd grade. So she's graduating in 9 years. Yep. And it's curious, I'd like to maybe follow up on this question, some years down the road. Yes, please. And it's just to see kind of, compare notes, so to speak. Right. Right. But it's hard when we're only seeing the world through our eyes. Yep. Especially when it comes to having people that are underneath our supervision, right? Yep. If we're leading and guiding and nourishing or nurturing rather, people within our agency, whether it be real estate agents or photographers, you can't always see the world through their eyes, right? It's literally impossible to do.
Right.
You can try to put yourself in their proverbial shoes for a short window of time to see things from their perspective for a moment,
Right.
but to live life in their shoes is impossible.
Right.
What we do know, however, is that we can do our best on a daily basis and be the ethical individual, be the individual of high integrity, and for lack of a better term, hope and plan for that integrity to be reflected back to us.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And from a business management standpoint, that's for me personally where the real fulfillment comes from, is seeing that integrity reflected back to me. Am I being the person that I would want my own boss to be?
Right.
Right. Because I worked corporate before this and
Yep.
it sucked.
Yeah.
Because I was a number.
Uh-huh.
I was the head of the marketing department for a food service company. And I literally heard my boss, who was part owner of the company, yell at a district manager on the phone of, we do not give people raises because they deserve them. We give people raises because we have to.
Oh.
And as soon as I heard that, everything changed for me.
Yeah.
That was like the defining pivotal moment of my corporate career. And then, my department, which was marketing, was looked at as a P&L. You cannot look at marketing as a P&L.
Right.
Marketing is effort with no guarantee of success and reward.
Right.
It's probability.
Right.
Right. And so you can put your best foot forth and you can try to invest that money. If you're doing it wrong, that money is not going to come back to you.
Right.
If you're not putting the right money in, you're not going to get anything back at all. Right. And so he wasn't willing to take those risks. And as a result, I was really in a dead end job.
Yeah.
It got to the point where I had such negative fulfillment from work that I'd come home miserable, and that trickled over into my family life.
Yeah.
And so the idea of work-life balance, it was that my family was taking the brunt of what I wasn't getting at work.
Right. Right.
And then work was taking what energy I got from my family.
Yep.
And that's a horrible siphon.
It's a really challenging, and I've kind of been there where there were challenges and things that I was struggling with. And then I decided, okay, if I open my own brokerage, some of these challenges, will be easier for me to manage in the way that I want to manage
and
them.
certain things I'm sure it did.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned like just wanting to start a business where my focus was on the agents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking to one of my team members recently as she was saying, she did this really inspiring event with a lender. And he was talking about mission statement and giving back and charity, but like, what's your mission statement? She came to me and she said, what's Open Doors' mission statement? And I said, that's something to think about all these years, 15 years later. And so at our team meeting at the end of the month, we're going to talk about what is each individual agent's identity? And the nice thing is we all have an identity that's very much in service to our clients, in service to each other, that's collaborative. But when I started Open Door, it was, I want to have a brokerage that's about the agent. Like to look at a brokerage through an agent's eyes, because I had done that. And what is critical for an agent when they go to their brokerage? And they're not a number, and it's not a volume endeavor. And I think that has worked very well over 15 years. And I also think that there are times when it's a challenge because you have to understand that there will be some agents that no matter what you do, as you try to make it, agent centric and client centric, and it's not going to be a fit. And as I reflect back on 15 years, I say, I think having the ability now to not be raising children in the latter half of this year will open up an opportunity for me that I'm very excited about to focus on business and build momentum. And when the momentum's built, and it's chugging along, life always lifes, but it was always
life always lifes.
Life
I like
always
that one.
lifes.
Yeah.
There was something with the kids, and it was like, and of course, my number one priority was the kids, and I'd pivot and focus on that. And I thought this is going to be a great opportunity to really be able to, keep going. But having learned a lot about when it's appropriate to make that emotional investment into your team around you because it's warranted and it's needed and it's appropriate.
Right.
And when I think we both are a bit of nurturers and, wanting to see people succeed. And I get my greatest inspiration when I see my agents succeed and their success. I'm as excited about an agent's sale, honestly, as I am about my own.
That's good.
But sometimes that can get to be, challenging because you're not as in control over that as you are your own.
Okay, now we're getting down to it.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is basically living through, and not in a negative way,
right?
But you're deriving fulfillment and degree of personal success through their success, right? Just like a parent would their child, right? However, when they also have failures, we can't be looking at that and then pointing the finger at the individual,
right?
Because we also have to look back at ourselves,
right?
And say,
Absolutely.
How have I not prepared them to handle that?
Right.
Right. And that's what makes us a better business owner, when we're able to ask ourselves those questions and come to the logical conclusion of this is how to do it better next time.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and that's a tricky thing, because we can't also then have the extension of, well, everything that they know is because of me. No. They also are going to know a lot of things that we had absolutely no hand in whatsoever, because they learned it from a friend, a colleague, or a customer, or whatever it might be. But what we need to return back to on a daily basis as business owners, as leadership roles, is in what way am I positively influencing the people that are under my employment? How am I positively influencing their own lives so that I'm adding value to them and by extension to their clients? Right. That's the level that we have to look at.
Right.
And then how am I softening the blows when something negative does happen? How am I a resource for them? What kind of role am I fitting for them for that?
Right.
And so long as the people who are under your supervision know, like intrinsically, that they have you as a trusted supervisor, partner, ally. And they can come to you with honesty and humility and vulnerability. And you don't use that against them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So long as that is how the cards that you're dealing out are stacked, I think that you're in a good spot for success.
Right.
And it will fall on deaf ears every once in a while, where you're going to hire the person who you've communicated this to. And they still aren't in the spot in their own life where they can identify the need for that or the value in it.
Right.
In which case, you shake off your sandals and you move on.
Yes, exactly. And that's another great lesson, is sort of seeing, we have this wonderful group currently of people that just are very like-minded in terms of how are they looking at a real estate transaction. It's about the client. Lori Kramer came up with an expression I love. She says, it's about the client, it's not about the commission. And I think that everyone that's on our team now is very much in service to their clients and the industry as a whole. And they really enjoy the fact that this is such an enormous financial and emotional endeavor. And they're excited to be a part of that, part of their client's life. And they do it, in service versus just, there are many people we see in our industry that it's just like, how am I getting to the closing table to my closing check? And so I think, back to what you were saying, is it can be a challenge to find the right people when you're in an industry with all personalities, and then you're trying to find out, okay, who is going to be one that's sort of going to fit in a collaborative manner in the team and support each other. And it took a long time of people kind of coming in and going out to say, okay, now I know. The next time somebody wants to, because Open Door has always grown organically. I've never recruited.
Okay.
It's always been organic. And, we have a few inquiries here and there, and I've finally figured out, okay, this is the type of personality that this person has to have in order to be a part of our team.
I get it.
Yeah.
And our hiring has improved significantly over the years, where I can sit down with somebody and really understand who they are in a short period of time, and whether or not their values automatically align with ours, naturally align, I guess that's a better term. And we hire based on personality and values. We don't hire based on capacity.
No.
We hire because you can teach. You can teach almost anything to somebody who wants to learn, but that's part of the values.
Right.
Am I speaking with somebody who is an information sponge?
Right.
Or am I speaking to a closed door?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And if somebody has closed their mind to the opportunity to grow, I can't help them.
Right.
Right. And so it really comes down to taking a look at what those common threads are,
Yes.
in the dynamics of your agents or your photographers, to see what makes them all tick
Right.
sequentially,
Exactly.
right? And then kind of reverse engineering through that
Right.
and saying, well, okay, why are those people working for me? Why are they successful here?
Mm-hmm.
And not maybe just financially, but also humanitarian,
Right.
success or community success, or,
Right.
how are they deriving fulfillment and why?
Yep.
And if you can boil that down, there's your secret sauce,
Right.
right?
Right.
There's your recipe that you need
Yeah.
to aim at.
Exactly.
What are you doing right now are you in a stage where you're looking for more agents and growth oriented, or are you in the humming along stage? Where are you at right now?
No, so we've been in the humming along stage, I'd say, for the last 2 years probably. So we went through a couple of years where all of this was finding its clarity,
Yeah.
for me. And I was getting very clear on, okay, we had a bit bigger volume and some of my feeling of service and integrity was a little compromised. And as we were speaking off camera, there was a dedication to my kids. And so where I could have managed it a bit better if I didn't have the need to, successfully raise my children. And so we found ourselves in a situation a few years ago where we had a fabulous core team, but we were just going to, go along. And now with my daughter's graduation and really, I think taking 2 years to get very clear about who are we, what's our identity, where do I want us to go, that sort of, buffeting along
Yep.
is done. And now I'm very clear about bringing in a few of the right people. So I know exactly how big I want to get. And I don't think I want to get bigger than 10 agents. So adding 3, 4,
Yep.
Maybe 5, but it's hard to find agents because very often real estate can be about having a large number of agents as a broker owner.
Sure.
You're best to have a large number of agents.
Yeah, you're guaranteed a higher likelihood of riding through difficult times.
Right.
You're going to have people come and go.
Right.
I've found through observation primarily,
Yep.
because I don't have statistics on this, but I've seen the number of jumping between brokerages that
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
And it always happens just about this time of year. We're recording in January for you guys. And I always see people jump ship right
Yeah.
around this time of year.
Yeah.
And there's usually, if you were to sit down with these individuals, you'd find that there's a reason for those jumps.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just because the grass is greener. A lot of times there's a real need for it because of how they've been treated by their broker owner, how they've been treated by their colleagues, what kind of support is available, how the commission split is. And, maybe they're looking at a different territory that they're trying to grow into, and that broker, that brokerage is not in support of that territory because maybe it's too far from their natural center of support, or it's a territory that maybe might not yield the values that brokerage is looking for.
Yep.
So those are all, concerns that people have. But it's difficult to see people have this kind of meandering between brokerages. And I sometimes wonder why, but it makes sense if you kind of parse it out and, realize that a large part of it comes back down to the values.
Right. And I think that's where my team is going to be a great resource. And the people that we work with and know, who really know who I am. And so I've said to the team, I think this is the year where we grow a little bit. And of course, their thought is, because we're such a collaborative brokerage where we talk, on my drive over here from my office, one of our agents was saying, what do you think the value is if you're going to connect to sewer versus not connect and have a repair to a Title V? And it's just wonderful that the whole team was like, well, here's what I'm thinking, here's my experience. And we do a lot of that. And also helping each other with open houses. And so I know that my team has expressed, we want to make sure, because they've lived through the changes with me as well.
Sure.
So they want to make sure that the people that come in are people they're going to be very happy to have on that collaborative string, very happy to be at the open houses that, and so I'm looking to them. I'm saying, you find,
that's the thing.
you find me the people that you think
that you want to align with.
That you want to align with, and will be. So I've got a couple of my agents who stepped right up. So that was sort of the end of 24, coming into 25, when I shared with them, okay, Sid is graduating. We've gone through some substantive changes over the last, 6 years. This is where I think we've all agreed we want to go, because it is important. I think I said to you on camera, not off, that when I started Open Door...
That's the danger of talking off camera.
Yeah, I was talking off camera. That when I started Open Door, I really wanted it to be an agent's brokerage.
Sure.
And so it's so important to me when I talk to my team, and my management style is not to say, this is Lauren's decision, this is what Open Door is going to do at all. Yeah. It's like, this is what I'm thinking, guys.
That's how
are you
here.
Feeling? And they give me some great feedback.
It's humbling.
Oh, yeah.
It's humbling, because sometimes you get the feedback that you don't expect.
Right.
Or you have a thought in your head and people are like, mm-mm. And so at that point, you have to really shift gears. You're like, oh, okay, why? And then you kind of tease that out, and then you give it another, week or two to think about. And you're like, okay, so I took your feedback, and the thought process that I have is I still want to do this thing, but let's do it this way instead, so it accommodates what you guys are thinking as well.
Right.
With a small environment, small changes are actually pretty big.
Right.
And it's not like corporate America, where you can just kind of hire somebody for their credentials, and then their ripples that they create are just absorbed by the masses.
Right.
This is a ripple turns into a tidal wave here, right?
Oh, yeah.
So having that kind of checks and balances, so to speak, with your staff is a very important thing.
Yeah.
And so, hiring has definitely changed in its dynamic for us, because I'm not hiring for field personnel as much as I'm hiring for total personnel.
Right.
Because some of our field personnel become office personnel depending on how our needs change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so that's a very different dynamic, because somebody might be great one-on-one individuals, but really difficult to get along in a larger group.
Yes.
Just because of an introvert, extrovert kind of behavior, or other life factors. So it's just very, very, it's very intricate, or very, I guess, multidimensional.
Yes.
When you're looking at hiring, or looking at expansion, or looking at changes.
Right.
And I'm glad to hear that you're doing that with your team.
Well, and I think, so one of my leadership growth areas that I've made progress in is, because as I said, when I started out, I really wanted all of the agents to be happy. And I was looking at working for a brokerage from the agent's eyes. And then I had a point in time where I had to be a leader. And that was an interesting dynamic to be, because we're so close as a family, but then to step out and be the leader and the boss. And it took me, I think it was only the last couple of years where I've really kind of said, okay, and felt that, now, is it because I just turned 60? Maybe. Like, did I need to get that old to be able to say, okay, this is my brokerage, and I love you, and you're an integral part of Open Door, and I constantly need feedback, because sometimes the feedback is like, oh boy, I didn't realize that, and I need to make that change.
That's the humbling feedback.
Oh, it can be so humbling. But then at the same time saying, okay, no, and here's why. Because I think when you own a company and you're an entrepreneur and you're a leader, you have a skill set that some others who are very strong leaders on the team may or may not have. And that has probably been the most interesting dance. And so as I say, 2025 will be the year for Open Door to expand by a few agents, God willing, if that's the right path that we're destined to go down. That's sort of my mission. I have to remember, that I'm interviewing the person and seeing if they will have the interview with the team. And keep that.
Can they grow with us?
Can they grow with us?
And can we grow with them?
Exactly. And then that, again, at the end of the day, it's my brokerage. At the end of the day, it could, all lands on me. And wanting to make sure that my agents are very happy and it's a good fit, and be the right person when maybe it's not. Yeah, so
like
we'll see. So we'll see.
We will see. And let's. I will say that I'd like to circle back in 1 year, and do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of do a postmortem, so to speak, right? Because I think that it's. So prior to you and I sitting down, we were talking with Jen, the stager. And one of the things that one of the things that I challenged her with, and it was very obvious when we were talking, that I asked her, I said, do you compete with yourself? And she's like, all the time.
Yeah.
Because I am 100% my own competitor.
Yeah.
And I don't look at other places and see what they're doing and try to feel the pulse with them all the time, this, that, and the other thing. I look at myself. Where am I today? Where was I before?
Yep.
And how do I compare to my prior self, my older self, or my younger self, rather?
Right.
You know, and how have I adapted and grown and evolved over the years?
Right.
Because I think that is probably the largest measurement of what we call success. Isn't so much. It's not a line in the sand that just keeps moving.
Right.
It's that if we are reflecting on the decisions that we made to get us to where we are,
yes,
and we're proud of those decisions, but not arrogant about them.
Yep.
Right. If we're proud of those decisions, and we reflect back and say, by and large, those were great decisions. I would have done this, this, and this differently.
Right.
But then we internalize those. Right. We learn from them.
Right.
And apply those to future decisions.
Right.
That's success.
That's the success. And I think I have such a wealth of, when we're just talking about, agents and team building, of experiences of saying, okay, this was a wonderful person, but their life and, having to raise 2 small children without other support, that makes it really difficult to be a realtor. And having financial pressures, when you get into real estate, I am a strong believer that you need to have a financial source that allows you the seed money to begin to market and grow.
Agreed.
So I've seen agents come in where you just have to be the parent and you can't be starting off a real estate career.
Yeah.
Or you really have to have the ability to market yourself for the first year, because it does take a year of quite a bit of marketing.
A lot of agents do not understand that when they get into the business.
Absolutely.
And what's the fall off? Like 80% of agents don't make it past the
Yeah.
first year. Is that what it is?
Yeah, first or second, yeah.
Okay.
And so I've made those mistakes in hiring because they've got the values and they've got the integrity and the team likes them. And then I've said their life doesn't support them.
That's the thing. You might be the right person for the job, but if the rest of your life is not in support of your job,
Right.
that's a non-starter.
Exactly.
It really has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
It has to go both ways.
Right.
And this is the whole myth of work-life balance, right? That starts being exhibited,
Yeah.
or you have to look into it and say, how is my work supporting my life, and how is my life supporting my work?
Yes.
And it has to be a both.
Right.
Because if it's a one-way street, someone's going to fail.
Right.
Either your job's going to win or your family's going to win.
Right.
And
right.
that's not. I don't think that any rationally minded individual would be able to sit down and have an honest conversation with about that and say, I'm okay with that. Because if that's the kind of conversation you have and they're okay with it, they're not the person for you, right?
Right.
Because that's not integrity.
Yeah.
That's not a whole life view.
Right.
So I think that we definitely need to continue that job as business owners.
Yeah.
And help our team and those who we come in contact with, our community, our colleagues, understand how these values are crucial to us because of very real facts.
Yes,
It's
and
not
life experiences.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I can't tell you how many people are like, oh, I'm thinking about getting into real estate. What do you think? And I say to them, do you have the ability to not make money? And do you have the entrepreneurial spirit to say, okay, I'm going to give up, because you have to be trained well to be a good realtor right after you get your license. You must be able to go into training at your brokerage and really absorb it. And you're not getting paid for that. And so are you able to walk out the door and know that it's an investment in your future?
Sure.
And then, you're just marketing to people and it takes a while.
Delayed gratification.
Yes, and I've said to so many people, unless you're able to really be the type of self-starter where you're going to be excited and you're going to say, okay, I'm really gung-ho. And the people I've seen that succeed are all incredible self-starters. And they're happy to get up and they're happy to say, okay, today is my social media marketing day. And today is my, physical, whatever it may be, marketing. And now I'm going to shadow and I'm going to help out at this open house and I'm going to go to training. When you first start out, there's no compensation for that. And it's
all an investment in the future.
It is. And I think that's probably the most important trait. So I've also as I've grown as a leader and business owner. I've had a few people in the last 2 years that I've said, I don't think this is the industry for you.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't want you to join Open Door, or I've sent them to a place maybe where it might be a better fit. But,
Sure.
You've got to make a lot of investment to get off the ground and get going. And then it's wonderful. Then it's a fantastic industry.
Sure.
But
But there's a lot to weather.
yeah.
And even after you get off the ground and get going, there's still weathering to happen.
Oh, there's constant education and learning and challenges. And it's not for the faint of heart.
No, there's market rushes, and then there's slumps. And then of course
Yeah.
there's a seasonality, actual seasonality of the business.
Yep.
Here we are in January, and December was our best December that we've ever had.
Yep.
But it's so slow.
Yeah.
So slow.
Yeah.
We don't make ends meet as a company.
Right,
We don't. Well,
right.
We're well in the red during December.
Yeah.
And which is why we, try to invest for the long term.
Yes, exactly.
Because I have to look to the spring. I can't be sitting in winter and be like, oh, wow, things suck. No,
Right.
They don't.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is typical.
Yeah.
Right. The whole, winter trend thing
Yep.
with New England real estate.
Yeah.
You guys down south, if anybody down south is listening, you have no idea.
Right.
And maybe you do, and there's an opposite season, in which case I want to talk.
Right.
But I know multiple contacts in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida area, and outside of natural disasters, they're humming along 12 months out of the year, 11 months. There's like a little bit of a pause during Christmas and New Year, but it's primarily because people are on vacation and taking breaks during that time, and not because of a weather-related thing.
Right.
And so we have that real seasonal trend roller coaster that you have to weather even when you are a seasoned individual. You need to be able to save like a squirrel during the summer.
Absolutely.
So that you can survive through the winter.
Yeah.
Because that income's not coming in December. Oh, maybe it is because of closings, but January, February, it dries up fast.
Oh, it does. Yeah. And that's an interesting balance being a broker owner is,
You probably have the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. That we have to squirrel away those closings because, there's a lead time. So I have, agents who right now currently in the January 2025 market have we call it the pipeline, nice little pipeline. And they're out and they're talking to people and they're like, I think we're going to have a nice, strong spring. But when you're paying the rent, that's January.
That's
and
a promise.
That check, and I know that they're going to have that closing check in May.
Yeah.
And so, you learn that, okay, Q1 is just what you've saved
All it is.
from earlier in the year, and that's and that's the balance of having to just keep people, and because agents can get a little deflated in December, and we always laugh. I was speaking with a friend of mine that's an agent, and she was saying January is usually this like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to sell another house. What's going to happen? Ironically, because we haven't had a lot of snow. Back to your weather, she was saying, this is a busier January. And I was just thinking,
last January was the same.
It feels like it's a busier January and things are clicking because we don't have, when I started in real estate, 2-3 feet of snow, people just aren't going to go.
No, they're not.
But
They're
now
not.
it feels like it's a little busier. But the paycheck isn't coming until May for all the work you're doing today.
For sure. Yeah. What is your lead time usually? So between getting something listed to closing is what? Just around 2.5 months?
So and it depends, varies on the property. So if you listed, a property that really didn't have any needs for repairs or updates, and it was going to be appealing to the majority of buyers, in this market, it's probably going to go in the first week or two. And then you've probably got 30 to 45 days before closing.
All right. So about 2 months.
Yeah.
For a house that is in fact ready to list.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And obviously the ones that are not ready to list, there's a lot of prep work to get done before getting there.
Exactly. And then if you have one, and we haven't seen much of it in recent markets, but right after the pandemic, anything would sell.
Yeah.
And then last year we started to see
shift
that, which I think is a wonderful thing, that there was a little bit of not everything's going to sell instantaneously because it shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't.
And it needs,
it's not healthy.
And that just means that it needs the right buyer.
Right.
Because when I started in my career, people loved making repairs. So when you had a house and they were going to put sweat equity into it, and now that's completely changed. And people just don't, for the most part, value sweat equity the way that they did 25 years ago.
Interesting. So you're seeing that on a buyer's basis?
On a buyer's basis,
Okay.
that if it's,
I don't-
and I think that's just
I don't come from that kind of family. I come
No.
from the family where we roll
where
up our
you want the
sleeves
sweat equity.
physically.
You know, you've got two people working. In most buyer families, the
Sure.
two people are working.
Sure.
And so there just isn't a lot of time, and people really want turnkey
Yep.
properties. That trend in the last 5 years really want turnkey
Yeah,
properties.
but they also want to finance something versus having to pay out of pocket for repairs, right? And so it's a lot easier to finance a turnkey home than it is
Right.
to buy something sweat equity, not have the time to do it yourself, so therefore having to hire out, in which case you're paying out of pocket because you're not
Right.
financing that
Yeah.
as easily anyway.
Well, yeah,
So-
back to the conversation this morning on our team is like, what's the value you're going to give if the homeowner says, I'll take on connecting to sewer, or I'll take on doing the Title V versus selling as is. And I always say there's a monetary value for the buyers that we could just give you a cost. It's going to cost you
Sure.
$15,000.
Yep.
But in the buyer's mind, they're going to add on an amount of money for their inconvenience. So they're not just going to say, oh, I'm going to look at this property and I'm going to give it a $15,000,
Addition, yeah.
you know, that it's going to cost me. They're like, you know, as they're looking throughout the town and they're looking at other properties.
Sure.
In their mind, as they think about what they would offer,
Right.
it's not that they're going to offer $15,000. They're going to offer $15,000. That can become 20, 25, because there's
That
just
makes sense.
the cost of them having to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are a lot of hidden costs to having to deal with a problem that became yours,
Yeah.
or you inherited, so to speak.
Yeah, and the unknowns and it's very interesting. Now, back when I got into this 25 years ago ish, people would be thrilled with the opportunity. If there's something that's a defect on a property, awesome.
Right.
You know, I'm going to get it, and I can do that myself.
I think that the amount of resources that people have now is very different from what it used to be, and in an odd way, insofar as I think that we are less resourceful now than we were.
And less handy. And I speak of
And
my
that's what
own-
I mean about the resources. Yeah.
Yes. And so just my own personal experience, you know, when I was growing up, you know, parents, fathers were teaching handy, and kids
Right.
were sort of doing handy things. And,
Sure.
you know, we came home from church on Sunday and we worked
Yeah.
for 4 hours, my sister and I, and it was mostly yard work
Yeah.
and stuff.
But it was maintenance.
my dad, you know, very, very, very handy, very renovate a house. You know, my husband watching his dad do stuff. My son, you know, he didn't grow up.
Yeah.
He grew up on a club soccer team.
Okay.
Okay, so that when he wasn't in school, he was playing soccer.
Sure.
And then on the weekends, he and my husband were traveling.
Sure.
And he's just now, as a man, you know, who's really becoming handy. And the last couple of years, I've laughed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's really learning to be handy and do things well. But that only came later. And
Was
so
it from necessity that he learned?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so I think that when I look at young buyers and I look at the entry level buyers and the buyers that are in their 30s, you know, they both are working and they have their kids. This culture, you know, is so different from when I grew up,
sure.
where, you know, literally in a little town in New Jersey, we'd get on our bikes, we'd leave the high school, we'd go honestly down to the park, go buy a bologna sandwich, we'd come home when the lightning bugs came out, you know, so that was just
when the streetlights come on, you come home. Yeah.
Yes, this beautiful little rural town down in New Jersey. And our kids, they get out of school, you know, the school day ends and it's go with, you know, and I look at my grandkids where they've got their activities. And I just think that the culture is so different that, you know, I have 2 daughters with children and there's no way they and their husbands are doing home renovations, like little things.
It doesn't fit into their family schedule at all.
Because of the way that the children's activities.
We've designed our lives.
Yes, absolutely. So back to real estate, I think that, you know, you have far more buyers that just want that turnkey property.
Okay.
And a few who it's in their trade and their family's trade where they're like, oh yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. So it used to be, I think, that if you didn't have the skills yourself, you were a close friend with, or you had a sibling that had those skills. And so it was a lot, and I'm going to, use broad brushes here, but it was a lot easier or more, it was more possible for someone to be able to just phone a friend and be like, hey, look, they're saying it's going to cost me 15.
Right.
What's it actually going to cost me?
Right.
And they might've been like, oh, I can do it for 8,
Yeah.
do it, go ahead.
Right.
And at that point, 15, it wasn't 15 anymore.
Yeah.
But now you're looking at 15, you're like, well, yeah, but it's 15 plus if I rip up the septic, I'm going to want to do more landscaping. Right. And so 15 becomes 20, becomes 25, becomes 30. And while we have our yard open, we might as well do a pool. Right. And so this whole this lifestyle creep that starts happening with all of that, I think that's also a debilitating factor.
Yeah.
I look at homes that are in shambles and I'm like, that's a gold mine.
Yes.
I look at that and
there are a few of you out there. Yeah.
For sure.
As a realtor, my code of ethics and all of that, I am not a home inspector.
Right.
I am not a licensed contractor.
Right. But you see warning signs.
Yes.
And
a broken seal and a railing falling off a deck. But yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can point those things out as potentials.
Correct.
And then of course defer to the home inspector to have that.
Of course. Absolutely.
Mark Fertoni.
He's my guy. He's my guy. Yeah.
He and I had a fantastic podcast.
I watched it. Yeah. He's my number one
awesome.
favorite home inspector because he's going to do what's in the best interest of the buyer.
For sure.
And he does such a great educational thing. And my favorite phrase with Mark is, time of death when we're halfway through a home inspection. And he and I are telling the buyers, you're done. You're done. You got to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're not done, you have to, the honest individual would need to have a path to completing the goal.
Absolutely.
Like if you're not done with this home inspection, that's fine. But what is your solutions list?
Right. And do you really fully understand?
Yeah.
Because being a responsible home inspector and buyer agent is, this environment, buyers just don't have the opportunity to be clear-eyed. They're running around, and I mean, already this year,
I've primarily the speed of the transactions.
Or just the fact, trying to find a home. So already, I have a buyer where we want this, nope, it's gone. Okay, we want this, no, it's gone. Okay, we want this, no, it's gone. Yeah. And so when the buyers come in and they write their offers, we say to them all the time, this is our job. You need to look at all of this. And it's like, well, the last 3 we lost out on went 30,000 over list, should I go 40,000? And especially for us.
It desensitizes them to it, doesn't it?
And for those of us that have been in for so long, we're like, no, but you want me to tell you, what in this town, what are properties selling for over a list? And it just gets really challenging. And then Mark comes in, then you get into the home inspection and they're like, well, we can't, we got it. Yeah. We can't lose it. And you're like, that's
the sunk cost fallacy. You have to walk away from that one.
Yeah. It's been great to be a list agent.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful to be a list agent. It's been tough to be a buyer agent and, see where things are going.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. And I think for us, we're a little bit on the outside looking in on that.
Right.
We're hired, very transactionally, right? We're there for that, blip of time.
Right.
To photograph and help market the house.
Right.
For essentially one day.
Yeah.
That's our lifespan.
Right.
You guys are in it for 60 days.
Yep.
Or more, depending on the repairs or the prep work required or the long pipeline that you follow to get there.
Yep.
So there's a lot more investment on your part. I can't imagine the rush and the helter-skelter that the buyer's agents are having to accommodate for. Not only for things that come on and off the market, but also having to field requests to see properties en masse, and then only 2 of them are still available when you go see them.
Right.
Because with how fast things are coming off the market, especially in the more developed areas,
right?
It's a real challenge, and I don't envy anybody, especially buyers, in those situations. Because when we bought our house, so we moved out to Leominster. See if I can get this one right. 9 years ago.
Okay.
9 years ago.
Yep.
And because we hired Keith just as we were moving to Lunenburg.
Yep.
Keith was with us maybe a month and a half, 2 months when we moved out of Leominster into Lunenburg. But when we bought the house in Leominster, it was right on Washington Street, right by the hospital.
Yeah.
And that house had been on the market for almost 4 months. And we were able to get it at a significantly reduced price, not off of what it was listing at. We offered what it was listed for.
Right. But the first price.
But the first price was like close to $40,000 more.
Yeah.
And we're still talking in the 200s here.
Yeah,
We're not talking up in the 400, 500. So
right.
it was reduced more than 10%. It was like
Yeah.
almost a 20% reduction in price by the time we got to it. We don't have that luxury today.
Right.
And even our home up in Maine, we bought it in the 200s.
Yeah.
It's now worth in the 400s.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous territory. And we only bought that 5 years ago.
Yeah. Maine is, I think your house is near my parents' have a little lake house on Crescent Lake, which is near Sebago. I think you guys are in that general vicinity.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. And it's been interesting, because of course my dad asks me every 3 months what the property appreciation is.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't measure it on a 3-month basis. Definitely measure it year over year.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge. So not only are the stakes a lot higher,
Yep.
the speed is a lot higher.
Yep.
And then of course it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
Right. The amount of information that you're given right off the bat,
Yep.
or you could have off the bat versus given, right? Because there's a whole different story there. It really comes down to what's the integrity of the people involved in the transaction,
Right.
to make sure that this thing is above board for everybody.
Well, and that's, I think, if you said, what's the most critical part of the real estate market today, I would say, honestly, that as a list agent, you want a very educated and skilled buyer agent on the other side, because they're going to make sure that with you in partnership, that the transaction is a smooth one, is successful, that all of the pertinent information is known and understood.
Known quantities.
Yes, and that everyone is doing a real estate transaction the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And because it's been a bit of the wild, wild west, sometimes you get into these transactions and you're just like, what?
You don't know the person across the table from you because they're either, new or not from the area or
they just don't, the biggest challenge is when they just don't care.
Okay.
And you think, wow, you're just churning and burning and it's all about volume.
Right.
And, we see, we have listings as list agents where people have come in crazy numbers. And you think to yourself, that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. And we get that it's a very challenging market to win the offer. But yeah, I think that's a big challenge that we're seeing. And, hopefully the market will settle somewhat so that that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I'd like to see a value downturn a little bit.
Just stabilization and everyone can be mindful, because then the other question, this is getting very philosophical, and way into the future, but in, let's just say 2030, whatever year it is, when people look back historically at the people that bought the properties in 21, 22.
How's that going to age?
How are they? Yeah. How is that going to age and I think that's, serving on the board of realtors, that's something that we're really attuned to is as an industry, we're all committed to the consumer doing this with clarity and understanding. And that's our mission.
Sure.
And so it's hard because, when you just look nationally and you look out at what's happening and you think to yourself, it's been a bit of the wild, wild west for a while. And we're doing our best to rein it in. But
on the one hand, it makes you glad to be where you are in your life.
Yeah.
But then it also makes you concerned for your children, and their descendants eventually. And even the existing market buyers, right? So like from a outside of our immediate family perspective, you still need to look at those people too.
Right.
Our oldest is graduating this year and her plans are to live at home while she goes to community college for 2 years because Maine has free community college.
Yes.
Because of the COVID thing and everything. And they're actually looking to make that permanent for what it's worth. For the first 2 years. And then she's going to go transfer her credits to like USM or something like that. For her 4-year degree. But she's planning on living at home. And I'm all in favor of that. We have the space, we have the dynamic at home to support that. But I am concerned for her because what would her initial salary requirement need to be in order to live on her own? So she's working 15 hours a week while she's in school, at a local pizza shop to earn money and try to save a little
Right.
bit. And her savings plan that she has outlined and thought through is pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's not growth oriented any more than what her direct earning is, right? Like it's not like an investment strategy and all like that.
Right.
It's just I earn $1.50 goes there.
Yeah.
But that's not building on its own, and neither was I when I was that age, right? So I have to look back at that and say, well, when I was 21,
Yeah.
I was spending everything that I had,
Right.
and I snapped out of that when I became a parent and a husband and all that kind of stuff, thankfully.
Yep.
And maybe they will follow suit as well. But I also need to do my best to try to prepare them for different strategies without causing undue anxiety and stress and worry.
Right.
And that's the dad side of things. It's always haunting me. It keeps you up at night.
And it's tough because I have two daughters who have bought their own homes now, their first homes.
Yep.
And they both did it during the very beginning of the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't crazy.
Sure.
And they've both seen huge appreciation. But back to that, what's the profile of a common buyer, which is, they're working, their spouses are working, and they're able to get in. But then I have my son who, isn't that I'm going into my corporate job, I'm going to earn this salary. He's, really interested in the ski industry and in skiing. And so that's where he's making his way. But that's not, I graduate, I get hired, I go, which is what his two older sisters did.
Yeah.
And so, I love his strategy, working hard now, buying the RV. They think they're going to settle and land in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
They've got their RV, maybe buy some land. Then they're talking about tiny homes, but it's just an interesting.
Huge supporter of those, by the way.
Yeah. So and because this is where Facebook scares me, because he and I have talked about that strategy.
Oh yeah.
Now tiny homes are in my Facebook feed.
You haven't done any searches.
No.
You just simply talked about it.
Just talked about it,
Yep.
and it's like Facebook. You don't know me. You haven't met me yet. I'm not your candidate for a tiny home.
Sure.
It's not Lauren's path. But a great opportunity. And so again, back to thinking about where is real estate really going to go, and what are the opportunities, because it should be the greatest path to wealth in America. And it always has been.
Yep.
And we pride ourselves as realtors that it is a path for building wealth. And now you look and you say, well, what will that look like? And I think, so there's a big age difference between my son and my oldest two daughters. And it's this generation of kids, he and his two younger sisters. I don't think it's going to be as easy as it was for me. You graduate, get a job, buy a house.
There's not a system, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's going to be more of a challenge. And I think things will get more creative for the younger generation.
I think that is a good takeaway from it, right? Because they're going to find ways to solve problems that they're having in a creative mindset through experimentation, through trial and error. And I think that's a wonderful thing, so long as through doing so, they don't become disenfranchised and give up. And that's the real concern right there, is that it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
It's very easy to get defeated, especially if you've grown up in an environment where a lot of things have been provided for you, or your calendar's been chock full of to do, and none of that was work on myself.
Right.
And so there's a lot of stuff in there that we have to kind of, parse out. And I'm glad that you got philosophical about it, because I think that that's an important part of life that we don't commonly talk about when it comes to industry discussions.
Yeah.
Because there is a existential bit that you have to really reflect on. And
when we look at this next generation, so we're always looking as realtors at, okay, who are the next first-time buyers? How can we service them?
Sure.
What are their patterns?
Who's the market coming up?
And we've always thought, where are their needs going to be? And it's interesting because, my son's generation is, just recently out of college, is a lot of them want to be happy. And my husband and I are really coming to this adjustment of, no, you graduate from high school and you go to college.
No, you got stuff to do.
You graduate from college, you get a job, you get a corporate job, you get whatever corporate job you can, because I was in the corporate world before real estate. You get whatever corporate job you can have, and then you go up the rung, and then you switch to another corporate job. And he and I are saying, Johnny's going to be really happy. He picked a passion, and he's looking at he spent a year skiing at Big Sky. I heard him say the name Patagonia.
Yeah.
I'm like, so I hope that he can do that. And that's going to be the interesting mix for this. We want to be happy generation is, and you're going to feed and clothe and shelter yourself. So you let me know how you're going to do that while being
That's
happy.
the hard part, right? Like that's the dynamic that we really need to try to plan for, because if we're going for passion and happiness above all else, it's not a fool's errand necessarily.
Right.
I think that at its heart, it's a very admirable thing to attempt.
Right.
The question is, do you have the resources, back to the handyman thing,
yes,
or the handiness thing?
Yes. So he's becoming very handy right now.
Well, you have to, right?
Yes.
You have to either develop or gather the resources. So you either have to know people or earn them yourself to accomplish a lot of the gaps that are going to open up.
Right.
Whether it be a financial gap that you can't find a way to make ends meet on, or a repair thing. I mean, like, if you're going cross country in an RV, you have to learn how to do your own mechanics work.
Yes, they are. It's
because
fascinating.
You can't just stop in somewhere and shell out a couple $1,000s to repair something that might cost,
exactly.
I'm picking a number here, but $200 in parts.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have the luxury to be able to afford that yourself because you have a job that supports that.
Right.
A whole other to not have the job that supports that and figure out how to make it work without having to hire somebody to do it.
Right.
I don't change my own oil in my car. I know how to.
Right.
And I would tomorrow if I had to.
Yeah.
But I don't have to, and therefore I won't.
Right.
Right. That's a conscious decision.
Right.
However, my kids, all daughters,
they
don't know how to crawl underneath the vehicle and change oil.
Right.
So my oldest, she said, "Daddy, how do I change my oil?" And I'm like, "Oh boy, we're gonna have to cross that bridge, huh?"
Yeah.
Because I got to tell you, it's one of my least favorite things to do is to change oil in a vehicle, especially we don't have a garage.
Yeah.
We're winter in Maine. I'm not going to crawl underneath a cold vehicle. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
Right.
But I also have the privilege of not being the luxury of not having to do that. Right. And so now that she's asking me to do it, I have the duty, the responsibility to take it upon myself, jack up the vehicle, show her how to trig the wheels, show her how to set the e-brake, show her how to do all of these things so that we can drain her oil and then teach her how to fill it up. Yeah. And that's something that not a lot of people have access to with that knowledge without having to seek it out intentionally. Mm-hmm. It's all available. Yeah. You just have to make yourself aware of where it is and learn it.
Right.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how that dynamic shifts, especially with the YouTube generation, if you would, where you can literally find any information about anything, sometimes incorrectly, online. And so how do you develop the skills to know which ones are the right ways, which ones are the wrong ways?
Right.
And moreover, how do you have the self-starterism to really achieve that knowledge with gusto? Like you need to really go after it in order to make it happen. And do we even have that kind of motivation in that demographic to see that through? Right. So
it's going to be interesting because, we were very focused on the millennials, as I'm talking as a realtor group, just kind of like, what are their needs? How do you communicate best with them? Uh-huh. And that was when, we older agents were suddenly like, oh, you got to get on social media. You have to have an internet presence. Yeah. They don't want to talk to you. They want to text with you. And now that's just become commonplace. Yep. And the next generation, it's going to be interesting to see, because I think it's still the millennials that are really the buyers. But the next one coming through, what are they going to look at as how are they best communicated with? And when they say, I would like to buy a house in Princeton, what's their next step? Because that's the key for us to understand. Is I want to buy a house in Princeton. So what do they do? Where do they go? Where do they get the information? And how do we stand out as that? Yeah.
That's an arc. That's a real difficult thing to have to continually learn how to market to a new crowd, new audience.
Well, and then back to the very beginning of our conversation of, so as an owner, then that might be the perfect person that's the next one who can really understand, who's in that
bridge the gap
age group. Yep. And can understand, because as my children will tell you, there's only so much that I want to be dealing with the whole, social media.
I don't manage our social media pages.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. I want to watch my grandkids.
I'm not that age to have them yet.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah.
I can align with that.
Yeah.
You know, I go onto socials just to see, like, you know, honestly, I've been looking at ads a lot lately because there's a lot of information coming through about new ideas, new products, new technologies. And I'm a big tech guy. I love technology, but I'm not a great social media guy because I'm not a huge divulger of information onto the public.
Yeah.
I love having very open, honest conversations one-on-one to people who are willing to listen and want to know.
Yep.
But I'm very personal and private when it comes to my social media use.
Yeah.
Right. And that's my dynamic. And maybe that's a Zennial, millennial crossover for me. But primarily I use technology currently so that I can stay on top of other technologies and see what we can adapt to as a business to ensure that we're creating a longevity for our clients. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very interesting because, like, I delegate the responsibilities of the social media management to right now a team of 3.
Yep.
And that's a full-time job for them.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing, because to really practice real estate in 2025 well, you absolutely have to have a strong social media platform and communication. And so, you know, I was chatting way off camera, you know, with some of your team, just about that's another thing that is a big growth that Open Door will do. But then it's finding the right person that's at that appropriate age and has that, you know, passion. And we have an abundance of training available to us out there of, you know, get on social media, you know, as other realtors and webinars and, you know, people who are famous in the industry for training, you know, it's all, how do you do so? But I come back to, I think it really needs to feel authentic and genuine.
It does.
And that takes a lot of time and work. And so I can sort of tick through the...
I would actually argue against that.
Yeah?
I don't think it takes a lot of time and work.
Really?
And the reason why
I haven't done it, so...
No, I know. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. I think by and large, a lot of people set themselves up for, oh my goodness, this is so hard. It actually isn't. It's hard if you're trying to screen what authenticity looks like. Mm-hmm. If you're saying that you want to be genuine and authentic on camera or on socials, and you just literally be exactly that without a filter, it's very simple. Yeah. What's not simple is what's going to happen if somebody disagrees with you and then you care about that. Yeah. Right. I think that being authentic, being genuine is fantastic. And you also need to be able to say, look, this is what I believe. This is what I feel. This is what I know. These are the facts stated, blah, blah, blah. And be ready for somebody to say, I disagree, and be mature about it. Right. Right. And so then at that point, it becomes very easy. Now, it's not easy dealing with difficult people on social media. That's for darn sure. Right. Yeah. And so I think that the fear of how we say certain things, even though we're trying to be genuine and authentic, the fear of how we say certain things or how it's going to get taken or like trying to overthink it, that's what creates the complexity or disables us from actually pursuing it, because we defeat the idea that we have before we even put it out there, because we've convinced ourselves that not everybody's going to like it. Right. And that's not genuine or authentic at all. Right. What that is it's screening, it's perfecting, and it's curating to the masses. Right. Right. Which is why I personally love outtake reels. Yeah. I love outtake reels. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've looked back on something that I've done and I'm like, man, I sound like an idiot. That's pretty funny. Instead of being like, man, I sound like an idiot. Can we pull that off? Yeah. You know, like I'm okay with it. Yeah. You know, and I obviously, you know, I've polished myself up a bit more to learn to not sound like an idiot. Right. Yeah. Again, so it's important to have that kind of, that presence, that mindset, and not say things without thinking it through, you know, and, you know, sure, we do some light editing to this podcast, but by and large, what you see on camera is what was talked about the whole time. Yeah. You know, and if there's anything cut out, it's because, you know, something got redacted because of client privilege or whatever, that kind of thing. Right. But what you do see is in fact authentic and genuine. And this is why these conversations for me are super important, because I get to know people like you significantly more than I ever could if it was all filtered. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, excellent. For the social media portion, just simply do. Yeah. I have to tell you, it's like getting the ball rolling. Yeah. The hardest part is starting it. Right. It's not keeping it up. Yeah. Sometimes you're going to go through lulls, but just like realtor, just like a realtor career,
Yeah.
it's about the investment at the beginning.
Right.
You're not going to have success off the bat.
Yeah.
The hardest part about social media undertaking is that initially there's not going to be this reward. There won't.
Yeah.
There won't.
Right.
What there will be is a reward in 2 years.
Right.
You just don't know it yet.
Right.
And you have to be comfortable with that.
Yep.
Just like you have to be comfortable getting into the real estate game, not earning money potentially for the first year to 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you'll get a little bit here and there, but there's no guarantee of anything.
Right.
Same thing with social media.
Interesting. Well, I will take that to heart because this is the year that no excuses. Sydney's graduating. She's got her driver's license.
There can always be excuses if we allow ourselves to fall victim to them.
Right.
And it's about moving past them and saying, no, my personal responsibility to my clients and to my people is to, in fact, have this undertaking.
Yeah.
And if I don't do it now, when will I?
Right.
You know, and this isn't a fool's errand at all. You're not looking at this and being like, I'm just going to just flip the switch on and everything's going to be great. No, we realize that this is an investment. This is a journey. Right. This is an effort. You know, it's like going back to the gym.
Yeah.
It doesn't just like pull you in the door.
Right.
You have to willingly walk through it.
Right.
You know, and you need to find that in your heart or in your mind or in your spirit. You need to have that motivation, that passion.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that passion or motivation, or if you don't have a why, you're never going to do the how.
Exactly. And what's your why? And that was my last year for me personally. You had said something previously while we were speaking about not having regrets. And I thought, I don't regret that when the brokerage was larger and things were more abundant, that when that took away from my being able to be who I needed to be as a mom, I don't regret at all shifting that focus and saying, my husband's got a 4-hour commute, so there isn't a spouse at home to help out. It's me with the kids and, round 2 hours, in 2 hours out.
Sure.
He was in the seaport with traffic. Yeah, not a good time, but I don't have a regret.
1 star would not advise.
Yes. No, thankfully now he's a lot closer to home, but I don't have that regret. But then just thinking the last year, like, okay, I teach as a broker owner, here are the fundamentals. I could tell anybody, this is what you need to do to grow your business. And so, I know exactly what I need to do. But like you said with the gym, it was really making that commitment, getting clear-eyed on what did I want to do? Which direction do I want to go? Where do I want the growth to be? And then getting in and doing
how do you create it, right? Like we have this, we can, not all, that's hyperbole. Most of us can envision what a house could be. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
But without having a plan on how to get there, it's just a dream.
Right.
You need to have a list of steps to achieve that goal in order for that goal to become a reality.
Yeah.
And so you could sit all day, every day, and be like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if, wouldn't it be nice, we should do this, we should do that, whatever, right? And those are all just ideas at the beginning.
Yeah.
But they'll only ever stay ideas until you say, no, I'm done with idea generating.
Right.
That's a good enough idea.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find a better idea than that up to now. I just need to get the ball going.
Yeah. Break it down, start doing it.
And for a homeowner, that might look like going to Lowe's or Home Depot and being like, I'm renovating my bathroom. I want to find tile that I like.
Yes.
And sometimes if you find the right tile, all of a sudden the bathroom's renovating itself.
Right. It drives it.
Right?
Yeah.
Or if you find the right fixture or the right finish or the right paint color, right? So sometimes you're like, you fall in love, or you can identify what the outcome might look like more with higher clarity, that all of a sudden the rest of the project looks more possible.
Right.
Right.
Well, just as I was saying that I got very clear, okay, I want to add like agents to our team and getting that clarity and then saying to my team, okay, this is what I think I want. And now I've had a few of them say, okay, here are a few names, and then we'll start. And it just sort of starts to go, down the path to.
It narrows the window.
Yeah.
And a narrow window that is intentionally narrow, right? Like if we're being narrow-minded because we're not thinking enough, that's a bad thing.
Right.
But if we're narrowing our field of view intentionally so that we can really get down to the core of what it is that needs to happen, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. But then after you narrow down that field of view, you then need to take the blinders back off of them while keeping that in mind.
Yep.
And that's the game.
Yeah.
That's the challenge, if you
Yeah.
would, you know. But I'm really anxious to see what 2025 looks like for you, your brokerage, for us. And I'm really glad that we were able to sit down and kind of hash these ideas out.
It's been fascinating, especially because we're both people that did and do what we created a business, you know, and that, you know, okay, so what does that look like in terms of being the owner and having the team and the work, and then, you know, where do we want to also, you know, do a little bit?
Yeah, the shifting dynamic is in itself fulfilling, you know, and that newness of you know, sometimes, you know, working in the field, whether it be selling or photographing, whatever, and it's sometimes working on the back end and managing people and seeing them grow, just like, you know, looking at our own children, looking at our family life. That changes in very similar ways. You know, there's a lot of alignment there if we choose to see the alignment. And if we're trying to keep them separate, we're going to have a very difficult time doing so. We need to have, you know, a nice, you know, both things feed each other kind of thing.
Exactly.
And in order to do that, we have to really be at peace with what it is that we do on a daily basis.
There you go.
So,
and that, I think, is the most critical thing you've said, you know, since we started talking hours and hours ago, is finding that, okay, I'm doing what brings me peace and joy each day.
So here's to 2025.
Here's to 2025. And our interview in January 2026.
Yes. Yes, because we're definitely going to be putting that on the books already. We'll walk out of here, talk to Kristen to get that on the books
Yeah, that'll
right
be
away.
exciting.
So,
excellent.
thank you, Lauren.
Great. Thank you.